This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. We got some major developments in two different cases in Georgia and in Texas about voting rights and voting suppression laws that the Republicans tried to pass after Joe Biden's victory. And now the Department of Justice and civil liberties groups have fired back, starting in 2021, challenging laws on the books in Florida and Georgia passed by right-wing MAGA legislators in order to disenfranchise voters in violation of the Civil Rights Act. What am I talking about? Let's start in Texas. Texas had a law, or has a law in the book, Senate Bill SB 1, promoted by its governor, Greg Abbott, its attorney general, soon to be impeached and convicted, Ken Paxton, in which mail-in voters, because that's the way, if you want to disenfranchise Democrats, you want to disenfranchise minorities and black and brown people, hit them with the mail-in and the absentee ballots, make them really complicated for no good reason, right? Stand on one foot, use a green pen, write with your left hand, got to have the exact ID or the exact address you used to have when you registered, all sorts of things which are minor and are not tied to a person's real ability to vote, right? Under the Civil Rights Act. These may be errors, but they're not ones that should lead to a person's participation in the ballot process being denied them. Whereas Merrick Garland put it in a press conference, the bedrock foundation of our democracy is the ability to go to a ballot and have your vote recognized. And these voter suppression laws, which are passed under the guise, under the thin veneer of stopping fraud in the election. Again, I'm going to say this statistic one more time in this hot take. There's fraud in every election, even at your local school board. But that total fraud is usually in the infinitesimal 0.02, 0.01%. Below 1% is fraud. It's almost never enough to overcome the electoral or the election or voting advantage of the person that won, ever. And so to say we got to stamp out fraud like DeSantis, the fraud police, the voting fraud police, you don't have a voting fraud police problem. That's like creating a paramilitary organization in your state to fight UFOs, to fight aliens, and I mean the ones from outer space. Sure, you can put taxpayer dollars towards it, but it's not a real problem. It's a made-up problem. But it's one here that's used in a callous, cynical way to put the thumb, down on democracy, to put the thumb down on and disenfranchise people's votings. Let me talk about Texas first. SB 1 required that mail-in voters, black and brown, disproportionately are mail-in and absentee voters because they don't have the time or the ability, right, or the health to stand in a 30-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour line in the heat, right? In some of these states, in November, it's hot. And so this law said that mail-in voters had to have the same ID when they showed up to vote that they listed on their voter registration. Who can remember that? That's like a merchant. I know you've all been in that situation that says, okay, give me the credit card that you used for that purchase, on a refund or return. Who can remember, if you have more than one credit card, which credit card you used at any given time, especially if you bought it on the internet? You got to pay. You got to play. I'm thinking of a number with the person on the other end. Is it? They go, nope, not that one. All right. Well, voter registration, yes. So if you had one ID for voter registration, let's say that was 3, 5, 10, 15 years ago, you got to have the same ID the day you vote or what you've listed on the absentee ballot. What's that for? Nothing more than disenfranchisement and to suppress the vote. And so the judge in Texas, Judge Xavier Rodriguez, a Bush appointee, has thrown out and blocked that part of SB 1 that requires mail-in voters to use the same ID to vote that they use to register to vote. And he did it under the Civil Rights Act, and particularly the materiality provision of the Civil Rights Act, which says that simple errors that are not related to real eligibility to vote should not stop a person's ability to participate in our democracy and vote and have his ballot properly counted. The second attack is under this bedrock principle that the people have the right to vote, that's been attacked there, is that if that SB1 section was not thrown out by Rodriguez, this should show you real world impact. Texas threw out applying that particular requirement, and the requirement that a driver's license number or the last four of your social be listed on your mail-in ballot, right? That requirement, which a lot of people absentee or mail-in got wrong and forgot it, they used that in Texas to toss 40,000 ballots in 2021. And I can assure you that the majority of those 40,000 ballots tossed were Democrat ballots, okay? And of black and brown people, statistically. And so that has now been eliminated, right? That type of error. Oh, you didn't get the driver's license number right. It's one digit off, couldn't read it. Or your social security, I don't know, is that a 7 or is that a 9 at the end or a 1? Can't figure it out, you're tossed. Is gone now because Judge Rodriguez has blocked it under the Civil Rights Act. Same thing with, oh, I'm thinking of a number. I'm here at your vote. Which card did you use to register 5, 10 years ago, 2 years ago? I can't remember. Sorry, can't vote. Violation, Civil Rights Act materiality provision, no longer able to be enforced based on Judge Rodriguez's decisions in Texas. Let me move to Georgia, because now you're talking about red states, right? I mean, Georgia's getting a little bit purple, but red states, and the fight back and the attempt by the Department of Justice and civil rights groups to push back and shove back against Republican legislators and House all across America that tried to do voter suppression after 2020 because they didn't like the results. And when they don't like the results, they want to lower Democratic voting. And since Democrats overwhelmingly, because of COVID and otherwise, and because they're just good at it, vote by mail-in ballot or absentee ballot. And those ballots count just as much as somebody like me that waited 2 hours to vote. And it should. And so attempts to undermine that usually is because Democrats do it better, and Democrat people have more black and brown and poor people than the Republicans. And that's how voter suppression happens, right? On its face, it looks like we're fighting voter fraud. We're fighting alien invasions. Non-existent. And then they use it to suppress the vote and violate the Civil Rights Act of the United States. In Georgia, a little bit of a mixed bag. Let's start with who the judge is. J.P. Booley, who sits in the Northern District of Georgia, which sits in Atlanta. Of the 15 judges in the Northern District of Georgia, 4 are Trump appointees, and one of them is J.P. Booley. And he ruled that the law in Georgia, which is called SB or Senate Bill 202, violates Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in a couple of instances, right? And there, in particular, there were limitations on Dropbox locations, on early voting deadlines, and new ID requirements, right? And the rest, and giving some water and food to people more than 150 feet away from a polling place, right? They're in line. They're not in the zone of protection in the first 50 feet, but the line stretches back 2 hours long, and it's getting hot. And voting rights groups want to be able, not at the 50 feet to the polling place spot, which is where you shouldn't be talking to voters and nobody should be campaigning or doing other stuff, but they want to be able to hand out food and water so people don't pass out and they're comfortable, and they stay in line to vote. Republicans don't want people to be comfortable to stay in line and vote. They want them to be turned away without a glass of water, without food, so they don't get up to the line and they don't vote, because most of those people are Democrats too. And so Judge Booley said, all right, I'm going to allow food and water 150 feet back for the duration of the line, even though I have trouble with it in the first 50 feet. Secondly, he said, I don't like the provision, and I'm going to block it in SB 202 because he didn't say it falls disproportionately on black people, but it does. That requires that your IDs match, right? So that your IDs match on your when you vote, and then the ID matches when you register. Particularly, Georgia uses, as a lot of states do, a birth date on the envelope. And some people either got their birth date wrong. It happens. They're off by a day. They're older. They can't remember. Was I born in 26 or 27 or whatever? Or people can't read their handwriting. And Georgia was using that to bounce people's votes. And the Civil Rights Act under the materiality provision says you can't do that. That's at best a simple error. Doesn't go to real eligibility to vote. You're creating like a poll tax. Some of you, might have seen, movies about the right to vote, like movies like Selma and other movies where, the white guy says, oh, you're here to register to vote. Name every judge in every county in this state. Ridiculous requirements no white person would either pass or be subjected to in order to keep black people from voting. Same thing here, right? Oh, thinking of a number. You got is that a 7 or a 1 or a 9? What is that? Sorry, you're out. Can't vote. What do you mean? Here's my ID. Here's my registration. Here's my birth certificate. I made a scribble. People do it all the time. How many people have written a check and got the numbers wrong? And crap, got to rewrite the check. It happens. And now that's been blocked. But Boulay was okay with other voter suppression laws passed by Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, and Governor Kemp, including limitations on where ballot boxes, mail-in ballot boxes, drop-in boxes are going to be located, and also the hours of operation of early voting, which again falls disproportionately on black and brown voters, which are primarily Democratic voters. And so that's what Stacey Abrams and her group are trying to do, which is to make it easy to vote, not fraudulently, but just make it easy to vote. And the Republicans are constantly trying to suppress the vote because the less people that vote, that means the less Democrats that vote, and the more likely they can win an election. We're going to follow voter suppression lawsuits brought by the Department of Justice and or brought by civil rights groups, and the results, what judges are ruling in favor of democracy and liberty, which aren't. Only in one place on the MeidasTouch network, on the YouTube channel that you're watching. Free subscribe to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. Help them get to 2 million free subscribers there. Follow me, Michael Popok. Give me a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm related to this particular hot take. You like this hot take? You're going to love what I do on Wednesdays and Saturdays with Karen Friedman-Agnifilo and Ben Meisalas, a long format podcast called Legal AF. It's like 5 or 6 hot takes put all together, except instead of talking just to you, I can talk to one of my other co-anchors. We take our 75 years of collective experience in courthouses and courtrooms just like this one. I'm a practicing trial lawyer, and we talk to you about it, analyze it, break it down, explode it for you, put it back together on a hot take just like this one. You can also follow everything that we do in one easy place. If you don't want to be on the YouTube or you're not on YouTube, go over to the MeidasTouch.com website. You'll pick up, they got a newsroom. People are writing articles left and right about law and politics and the intersection of law and politics. You can get all of my hot takes, all of my video content on the MeidasTouch.com website, along with all the other contributors. If I'm not doing it at the intersection of law and politics, Ben Meisalas, Karen Friedman-Agnifilo are. You can also pick up our podcast there as well. Watch me on hot takes just like this one. Only one place, again, MeidasTouch Network. Until the next hot take, this is Michael Popok, Legal AF.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.